Grace Anderson stood frozen in the doorway of Parker Industries' executive suite, her heart hammering against her ribs. Across the expansive office, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Chicago skyline, stood Nathan Parker, billionaire CEO, notorious perfectionist, and as of this moment the man who had just asked her to pretend to be his wife. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and outrageous. "I'm sorry, Mr. Parker. Could you repeat that?" Grace managed, clutching her tablet like a shield. The morning sunlight caught the edges of his dark hair, creating a halo effect that seemed utterly contrary to the devious proposition he'd just made. Nathan straightened his impeccable navy suit and fixed those penetrating blue eyes on her. "It's a simple business arrangement, Ms. Anderson. For the next 3 months, I need you to act as my wife. The Henderson contract depends on it." Grace had been Nathan's executive assistant for precisely 11 months. In that time, she'd organized international conferences, handled irate board members, and once even coordinated an emergency helicopter landing. But nothing had prepared her for this. "I don't understand," she said carefully. "How could your marital status possibly affect a business contract?" Nathan's expression darkened as he moved toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Richard Henderson is old-fashioned. He believes in family values, tradition, stability. He won't finalize the merger with a bachelor he considers," he paused, his jaw tightening, "unreliable." "So tell him you're engaged," Grace suggested reasonably, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach whenever he looked at her that way. Intense, calculating, seeing through her professional veneer. "I tried that 6 months ago. He wants to meet my wife. Not my fiancée. My wife." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration from a man known for his unwavering control. "The Henderson acquisition is worth $2.8 billion. It's the cornerstone of our expansion plan." Grace moved cautiously into the office, her mind racing. "Surely there are actresses you could hire, professional services for this sort of thing?" "Henderson has investigators, deep background checks. We need someone whose credentials and history would stand up to scrutiny." Nathan turned to face her fully. "Someone already embedded in the company with legitimate reasons to be close to me. Someone I can trust." The implication hung between them. In the corporate gossip mill, their professional relationship had always raised eyebrows. Grace was only 28, with a business degree and a determination that had caught Nathan's attention during a catastrophic company event when his previous assistant quit mid-crisis. Her quick thinking had saved the day, and the next morning she'd been summoned to the executive floor. "This is completely inappropriate," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "I could file a harassment claim." "You could," Nathan agreed calmly, "but you won't. You seem very confident about that." "Because I know you, Grace. Better than you think." He walked to his desk and pressed a button on his computer. "Your younger brother Ben starts at Princeton next month. An impressive accomplishment for a kid from your background." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. "How do you—" "I make it my business to know everything about the people closest to me." Nathan's voice softened slightly. "His scholarship covers tuition, but not room and board, books, or living expenses. On your salary, supporting him would be challenging." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Grace had been saving every penny, working overtime, even taking on freelance work at night. But the numbers never quite added up. Ben was brilliant. The first in their family to attend an Ivy League school. She'd promised their mother before she died that she would make sure he got there. "What exactly are you offering?" Grace asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's smile was slight but triumphant. 3 months. Public appearances as Mrs. Parker, a private arrangement with separate accommodations, of course. In return, a compensation package that includes a substantial bonus and a trust fund established for your brother's complete educational expenses. Grace felt sick. "You're buying me." "I'm proposing a mutually beneficial business arrangement." Nathan walked toward her slowly. "You need financial security, I need a temporary wife. It's transactional. And what happens after 3 months? An amicable separation. You'll receive an excellent recommendation and a severance package that would set you up nicely, should you choose to leave Parker Industries." Grace's mind raced through the possibilities, the implications. "And if I refuse?" Nathan shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Then I find someone else. Your position remains secure, though I can't guarantee your brother's educational future will be as promising." The threat was veiled, but unmistakable. Grace felt a flash of anger. "That sounds remarkably like blackmail, Mr. Parker." "It's an opportunity, Ms. Anderson, one that expires in approximately 30 seconds. Outside the windows, Chicago sprawled beneath them, oblivious to the life-altering conversation happening 90 floors up. Grace thought of Ben's face when he'd received his acceptance letter, the years of struggle since their parents' deaths, the promises she'd made. "If, and I mean if, I were to consider this insanity, I would have conditions," she said finally. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Surprise, perhaps. He hadn't expected negotiation. "Name them." "Complete educational coverage for Ben, not just Princeton, any graduate studies he pursues. A legal contract stating this is a business arrangement with no," she faltered, "intimate expectations, and a non-disclosure agreement protecting both of us." Nathan's expression was unreadable. "Anything else?" Grace took a deep breath. "Yes. Your complete honesty about why Richard Henderson is so important to you. The real reason." For a moment, something vulnerable crossed Nathan's face. So quickly, Grace almost missed it. Then his corporate mask slid back into place. "Fine, my lawyer will draw up the paperwork. We leave for Henderson's estate in Vermont on Friday." He extended his hand, the gesture coldly formal. "Do we have a deal, Ms. Anderson? Or should I say, Mrs. Parker?" Grace looked at his outstretched hand, knowing she stood at a crossroads. Taking it meant compromising her principles, entangling her life with a man known for his ruthlessness in business. Refusing meant watching her brother's dreams potentially crumble. She placed her hand in his, trying to ignore the electric current that seemed to jump between them. "We have a deal." What Grace couldn't have known, as Nathan's fingers closed around hers, was that the condition that would soon take her by surprise had nothing to do with their fake marriage arrangement. It had everything to do with the truth Nathan was hiding, a truth that would turn her carefully constructed world upside down. As she left his office, Grace didn't notice the small black and white photograph Nathan slipped into his desk drawer, a photograph of a young boy with eerily familiar eyes standing beside a woman whose face had been carefully removed from the image. That evening, Grace sat on the edge of her bed in her modest apartment on the north side of Chicago, staring at the business card Nathan's lawyer had pressed into her palm as she'd left the office. The apartment was small but tidy, a one-bedroom she'd decorated with second-hand furniture and colorful throws to mask their worn edges. The walls were lined with photographs of her and Ben at various stages of their lives. Their parents' smiling faces looked out from a silver frame on her nightstand, a reminder of everything she had lost and everything she fought to protect. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ben. "Got my housing assignment. Roommate seems cool. Pre-med from Seattle. Still figuring out textbooks. They're crazy expensive. Don't worry, I'll find used ones. Love you, sis." Grace pressed the phone to her chest, eyes closing briefly. Every decision she'd made since their parents' car accident 5 years ago had been for Ben. She'd put her own dreams on hold, worked multiple jobs, done everything possible to keep them afloat. Taking the position at Parker Industries had been a financial lifeline. The salary was nearly triple what she'd made before. But this new arrangement crossed boundaries she'd never imagined broaching. With trembling fingers, she dialed the number on the business card. "Judith Blake speaking," answered a crisp, professional voice. "This is Grace Anderson, Mr. Parker's assistant." The word suddenly felt inadequate, misleading. "Ah, Ms. Anderson, I've been expecting your call. The contracts are being drafted as we speak. Perhaps we could meet for breakfast tomorrow to go over the details." The lawyer's matter-of-fact tone made it sound as if they were discussing nothing more unusual than a property lease. "Yes, that would be fine." "Excellent. The Four Seasons, 7 a.m. Mr. Parker has also arranged for a personal shopper to meet you afterward. You'll need an appropriate wardrobe for your new role." "A wardrobe? Of course." Grace couldn't exactly show up at a billionaire's estate in her Target blazers and sensible pumps. "I understand." After hanging up, she moved to her small closet and slid open the door. Her work clothes hung neatly pressed, modest professional attire she'd carefully built over years. Nothing that would befit the wife of one of Chicago's wealthiest men. She reached to the back of the closet and pulled out the one cocktail dress she owned, a simple black number she'd worn to the company Christmas party. Nathan had barely glanced at her that night, too occupied with charming potential investors. What kind of woman did Richard Henderson expect Nathan Parker's wife to be? And how could Grace possibly convince anyone that a man like Nathan would choose someone like her? Her laptop chimed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Preliminary Briefing Confidential." The sender was nparkerindustries.com. Grace settled at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea beside her, and clicked open the message. It contained a single attachment, a detailed dossier on Richard Henderson, his family, and the history of Henderson Global Enterprises. The email body was brief and to the point. "Review before our meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. We need to align our stories. Research my public background as well. You should know your husband better than anyone. NP." A postscript followed. "P.S. Your brother's educational trust has been established. Confirmation documents will be included in tomorrow's contract package." Grace stared at those words, a mix of gratitude and resentment washing over her. Nathan was already holding up his end of the bargain, making it impossible for her to back out. Opening the attachment, she began reading about Richard Henderson, 73 years old, widowed. 3 adult children who worked in various branches of his empire, built his company from nothing over 50 years. Conservative values, believed strongly in family legacy. Numerous philanthropic ventures focusing on children's education and family stability initiatives. The pieces began falling into place. Henderson would indeed look skeptically upon an unmarried CEO, especially one with Nathan's tabloid history of brief, high-profile relationships with models and actresses. To Henderson, such behavior would signal instability, a lack of commitment. Not someone he would trust with his life's work. Grace rubbed her tired eyes and typed Nathan Parker into her search engine. Thousands of results appeared: business profiles, news articles, society page mentions. She clicked on images and was greeted by hundreds of photographs. Nathan at charity galas, Nathan closing major deals, Nathan on his yacht, Nathan with various beautiful women on his arm, none lasting more than a few public appearances. One article from a financial magazine caught her attention: "The Enigma of Nathan Parker, business genius with a troubled past." The piece hinted at family tragedies, but gave no specifics. Nathan's parents had died when he was in college. He'd built Parker Industries from modest beginnings into a technological powerhouse. He was known for his brilliant strategic mind, his unwavering focus, and his intensely private personal life. Nowhere could Grace find mention of any long-term relationships. No one who had seemingly touched the heart of the man who was about to become her pretend husband. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. "Ms. Anderson," Nathan's voice. "I trust you received my email." Grace straightened instinctively as if he could see her. "Yes, I'm reviewing it now." "Good. There's been a change of plans. Henderson has moved up our meeting. We leave tomorrow night instead of Friday." "Tomorrow?" Grace's heart raced. "That doesn't give me much time to—" "All arrangements have been made," he interrupted. "The stylist will bring everything you need. My driver will collect you at 7 p.m. Pack for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. The reality of what she'd agreed to suddenly hit her full force. "Mr. Parker," she said carefully, "I still don't know what your condition is. The one your assistant mentioned would take me by surprise. If we're going to make this convincing, I need to know what I'm walking into." A long pause followed. When Nathan spoke again, his voice held an edge she'd never heard before. "We'll discuss that tomorrow, in person. Some things shouldn't be said over the phone." The line went dead, leaving Grace staring at her reflection in the darkened window, wondering what she had gotten herself into, and what secret Nathan Parker was keeping that could possibly be worth the elaborate charade they were about to undertake. The Four Seasons lobby gleamed with polished marble and subtle opulence. Grace arrived 15 minutes early for her breakfast meeting with Nathan's lawyer, dressed in her most professional outfit, a navy pencil skirt and cream blouse that suddenly felt woefully inadequate in these surroundings. She clutched her worn leather portfolio like a talisman. "Ms. Anderson?" A tall woman with silver-streaked black hair approached, hand extended. "Judith Blake, thank you for being prompt." The lawyer led her to a secluded table in the restaurant where coffee was already waiting. Without preamble, Judith slid a leather folder across the table. 3 copies of each document: the marriage contract, non-disclosure agreement, educational trust for Benjamin Anderson, and the severance terms for after the dissolution. Grace opened the folder, scanning the pages. The language was dense with legal terminology, but the essentials were clear. A 3-month arrangement with an option to extend if necessary. Complete financial coverage for Ben's education, a monthly stipend that made Grace's eyes widen, more than triple her current salary, and a severance package that would allow her to start fresh anywhere she chose afterward. "The trust for your brother is irrevocable," Judith noted, tapping that document. "Regardless of how this arrangement concludes, those funds are secured." Grace looked up. Mr. Parker was very thorough. "He always is." Judith's expression softened slightly. "I've worked with Nathan for 12 years, Miss Anderson. I know this situation is unusual, but I assure you he is a man of his word." "Then perhaps you can tell me what his condition is, the one I'm supposed to find surprising." Grace set down the papers. "He's been evasive about it." Judith's perfectly composed features revealed nothing. "That's between you and Mr. Parker. I only handle the legal aspects." She checked her watch. "Your appointment with the stylist is in 30 minutes. The top-floor boutique. Mr. Parker has arranged everything. You'll need to sign these before you go." Grace hesitated, pen poised over the signature line. "What am I really getting myself into, Ms. Blake?" The lawyer met her gaze directly. "A business arrangement with one of the most powerful men in Chicago. I suggest you remember that distinction at all times." An hour later, Grace stood in a luxurious private shopping suite surrounded by more clothing than she'd ever seen outside of a department store. A petite woman named Vivian circled her, assessing. "Mrs. Parker will need daywear, evening attire, resort clothing, and appropriate accessories," Vivian announced to her assistants. Mr. Parker specified the color palette should complement her complexion. She turned to Grace. "Let's begin with measurements. I'm not Mrs. Parker yet," Grace corrected automatically. Vivian smiled knowingly. "For our purposes today, you are. Now let's find you a wardrobe worthy of the name." What followed was a whirlwind of designer clothes, shoes, and accessories. Grace tried to protest the extravagance, but Vivian was implacable. Mr. Parker was explicit about the image requirements. The wife of Nathan Parker would never wear off the rack. By early afternoon, Grace had acquired more clothing than she'd owned in her entire life. Everything would be delivered to her apartment before their evening departure. At precisely 2 p.m., Grace entered Nathan's office, mentally rehearsing what she would say about the morning's excesses. She stopped short when she saw him standing with another man, tall, distinguished, with sharp eyes that assessed her immediately. "Ah, here she is now," Nathan said, his voice warm in a way Grace had never heard before. He crossed the room and did something even more unexpected. He kissed her cheek and took her hand. "Grace, darling, I'd like you to meet Marcus Whitley, Richard Henderson's head of security. He arrived unexpectedly to brief us." Grace froze momentarily before her professional instincts kicked in. She smiled and extended her free hand. "How lovely to meet you, Mr. Whitley." The man's handshake was firm, his gaze evaluating. "Mrs. Parker, or is it still Miss Anderson professionally? I understand you continue to work as Mr. Parker's executive assistant despite your marriage." A test, their first test, and they hadn't even had time to align their stories. "Grace maintains her professional identity at the office," Nathan interjected smoothly. "It helps avoid any appearance of favoritism with the staff, but legally she's very much Mrs. Parker." "Almost 6 months now, isn't it?" Whitley asked casually. Grace squeezed Nathan's hand in warning. 6 months. The dossier hadn't mentioned anything about timing expectations. 5 months and 12 days, Nathan replied without hesitation. "Though sometimes it feels like I've known Grace my entire life." His thumb brushed over her knuckles in a gesture that seemed surprisingly intimate. "A whirlwind romance, by all accounts," Whitley noted. "Very few public appearances together." "We value our privacy," Grace said, finding her voice, "and I've never been comfortable in the spotlight." Nathan's expression softened as he looked at her. "One of the many things I love about her." The tenderness in his voice was so convincing that for a moment Grace almost believed him. Whitley nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Mr. Henderson looks forward to meeting you both. The helicopter will be ready at 8 p.m. at the private airfield. We'll handle your luggage from your residence." After he left, Nathan immediately released Grace's hand and moved to his desk. "Well done, you think quickly. You might have warned me we'd be starting our performance so soon," Grace said, her cheek still tingling from where his lips had brushed it. "And 5 months of marriage, I know nothing about being Mrs. Parker, which is why we're meeting now." Nathan pressed a button on his desk, and the office windows frosted over, ensuring privacy. We have 4 hours to create a convincing marriage. And to discuss your mysterious condition, Grace insisted. I've signed your contracts. I've agreed to this charade. No more evasions, Mr. Parker. Nathan studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well. He walked to a hidden panel in the wall and opened it, revealing a safe. From it, he removed a file folder. What I'm about to share doesn't leave this room. It's not covered in your NDA because officially, this information doesn't exist. He placed the folder on the desk between them. Grace opened it and found herself looking at the photograph she'd glimpsed yesterday, the one with the boy and the woman whose face had been removed. Beneath it were hospital records, legal documents, and a birth certificate. His name is Joshua, Nathan said quietly. He's 8 years old, and he's my son. Grace looked up sharply. You have a child? There's nothing about this in any public record. Because no one knows he exists. Not the board, not the press, not anyone at Parker Industries except Judith. Nathan's expression was unreadable. His mother was a complication. She agreed to complete privacy in exchange for generous financial support. She died in a boating accident 3 years ago. Grace felt a chill. And Joshua? He's been raised by his maternal grandparents in a small town in Vermont. Not far from Henderson's estate, Nathan's voice grew tight. They're elderly now. The grandfather has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. They can no longer care for him. The pieces began falling into place. So you need a wife? Because I'm taking custody of my son, permanently. Nathan met her gaze directly. Henderson's contract is vital, yes. But this trip to Vermont serves another purpose. I'm bringing Joshua home to Chicago, and a child suddenly appearing in the life of a notorious bachelor would raise too many questions. Questions that could harm Joshua's privacy and adjustment. But a child appearing in the life of a recently married couple, Grace whispered, would seem natural, expected even. Nathan's jaw tightened. That's my condition, Grace. This isn't just about pretending to be my wife. It's about helping me introduce my son to the world in a way that protects him. Grace stared at the photograph of the little boy. He had Nathan's eyes, the same intense blue. Does Joshua know about this plan? He knows I'm his father. He knows he's coming to live with me. The rest? Nathan hesitated. He's meeting you tomorrow. The magnitude of what Nathan was asking hit her fully. Not just a fake wife for business appearances, a fake stepmother to a real, living child who had already experienced profound loss. This is so much more than what I agreed to, Grace said, her voice barely audible. It's why the contract included the option to extend beyond 3 months, Nathan admitted. Joshua will need stability during this transition. A sudden divorce immediately after he moves in would be another disruption. Grace stood up, needing distance. You should have told me from the beginning. Would you have agreed if I had? She looked at him, really looked at him for perhaps the first time. Behind the powerful CEO facade, she glimpsed something she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Fear, even. Nathan Parker was terrified of failing his son. I don't know, she answered honestly. But you didn't give me the chance to make an informed decision. I'm giving you that chance now, Nathan said quietly. Walk away if you want to. The educational trust for Ben stands regardless. I'll find another solution. Grace turned to the window, her reflection ghostly in the frosted glass. She thought of her own loss, the pain of having parents suddenly ripped away. She thought of this little boy, facing yet another massive life change. When does Joshua arrive in Chicago? She asked finally. 3 weeks, Nathan replied. After we return from Vermont, he'll finish the school year there, then transfer here. Grace took a deep breath and turned back to face Nathan. Then we have 3 weeks to convince the world, and your son, that this marriage is real. The journey to Vermont unfolded like a surreal dream. Grace watched through the helicopter window as Chicago's glittering skyline receded into the distance, giving way to darkening countryside below. Beside her, Nathan worked on his tablet, seemingly oblivious to her inner turmoil. They hadn't spoken much since leaving his office. The revelation about Joshua had left Grace with too many thoughts swirling in her mind. We'll land in 20 minutes, Nathan said finally, closing his tablet. Henderson's car will meet us at the private airfield. Grace smoothed the silk blouse that had been delivered to her apartment, part of her new wife of a billionaire wardrobe. I've been reviewing the materials you sent. How did you and I meet? We should align our story. A ghost of a smile touched Nathan's lips. You don't think the truth works? Executive assistant catches boss's eye? That sounds like a cliché and slightly inappropriate given your position. Fair point, Nathan considered for a moment. We met at the Children's Hospital Charity Gala last year. You were there representing your previous employer. I've never been to that gala, Grace pointed out. No one will know that. It's plausible, respectable, and easy to remember. He reached into his jacket and removed a small velvet box. Before we land, we need to address this. Inside the box nested a stunning diamond ring, an elegant emerald-cut stone flanked by smaller diamonds on a platinum band. Beside it sat a matching wedding band. Judith selected them, Nathan explained, seeing Grace's expression. The engagement ring is designed to look like a family heirloom, something my mother might have worn. It's beautiful, Grace admitted, her fingers hovering over the rings. May I? Nathan asked, his voice unexpectedly gentle. When she nodded, he took her left hand and slid the rings onto her finger. They fit perfectly. The intimacy of the gesture caught Grace off guard. For a brief moment, Nathan's fingers lingered on hers and their eyes met. Something shifted in the air between them. Something neither was prepared to acknowledge. There, Nathan said, breaking the spell. Now you look the part. Grace twisted the rings, already feeling their unfamiliar weight. What about you? In answer, Nathan held up his left hand, where a simple platinum band now gleamed. I put it on before we left Chicago. The helicopter began its descent, forcing them back into their seats. As the ground approached, Nathan leaned closer. Remember, Henderson will be watching for any sign this isn't genuine. We need to be convincing. I understand, Grace replied, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. How could she convincingly play the wife of a man she was only beginning to know? Richard Henderson's estate sprawled across 50 acres of pristine Vermont countryside. The main house, a grand colonial revival mansion, glowed with warm light against the night sky as their car approached. Grace felt her nervousness intensify. You'll be fine, Nathan murmured, surprising her again with his perceptiveness. Then, as the car stopped, he did something utterly unexpected. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers grazing her cheek. Just follow my lead. The gesture was clearly for the benefit of anyone watching, but it sent an unwelcome shiver down Grace's spine. Richard Henderson awaited them in the entrance hall, tall and distinguished with silver hair and piercing eyes that missed nothing. He greeted Nathan with a firm handshake, before turning his evaluating gaze to Grace. So, this is the woman who finally captured the elusive Nathan Parker, he said, his voice carrying the slight rasp of age. I was beginning to think you were married to your company, Nathan. I was until Grace came along, Nathan replied smoothly, placing his hand at the small of her back in a gesture of casual intimacy. She changed everything. Henderson studied Grace with undisguised curiosity. And what exactly do you see in this workaholic, my dear? It was their first real test. Grace smiled, allowing herself to look at Nathan as a woman might look at her husband, his determination, his brilliance. She paused, then added softly, and the heart he tries to hide from everyone else. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes, surprise and perhaps something deeper. He hadn't expected that answer. Henderson laughed approvingly. Well said, Mrs. Parker. I think I'm going to like you. He gestured toward the interior of the house. Come, dinner awaits, and we have much to discuss. The evening proceeded with surprising ease. Grace found herself drawing on skills she'd developed as Nathan's assistant, anticipating conversational directions, smoothly deflecting potentially problematic questions, supporting his business points at just the right moments. The difference was that now, instead of standing in the background, she sat beside him at the table, her hand occasionally covered by his, sharing private smiles that felt increasingly less performative. Richard Henderson watched them with shrewd eyes, asking subtle questions about their relationship, their future plans, their life together. Each time, they navigated the potential traps with a synchronicity that surprised even them. After dinner, when the men retreated to Henderson's study for brandy, Grace was shown to the gardens by Henderson's daughter, Elaine. It's refreshing to see Nathan with someone like you, Elaine commented as they strolled among the night-blooming flowers. His previous companions were rather different. Oh? Grace kept her tone casual. Models, actresses, socialites, beautiful but vapid. Elaine smiled wryly. You have substance, and he looks at you differently. How so? Like you're real to him, the others were accessories. Elaine stopped by a rose trellis. Father was concerned, you know, about Nathan's stability. He doesn't trust men who flit from woman to woman without forming attachments. Grace thought of Joshua, the real reason behind their charade, and felt a pang of guilt. Nathan is more complicated than his public image suggests. Clearly, Elaine studied her thoughtfully. You must be very special to have changed him so completely. Later that night, in the luxurious guest suite they'd been assigned, Grace faced the reality of their situation. The bedroom was clearly designed for a couple. A massive four-poster bed dominated the space. "I'll take the sofa in the sitting room," Nathan said immediately, setting down his bag. "There's no need," Grace replied pragmatically. "The bed is enormous. We can share it without complications." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You surprise me, Miss Anderson." "Mrs. Parker," she corrected with a small smile, "and if we're going to convince everyone, including your son, that this marriage is real, we need to be comfortable around each other." They prepared for bed in an awkward dance of politeness and averted gazes. Grace emerged from the bathroom in silk pajamas, another item from her new wardrobe, to find Nathan in sleep pants and a t-shirt, his usual corporate armor stripped away. He looked younger, more approachable. "Henderson seems convinced," Grace said, slipping under the covers on her side of the bed. "Thanks to you," Nathan acknowledged, keeping a careful distance on his side. "That comment about my hidden heart was..." Inspired, Grace turned to look at him in the dim light. "Was it? I'm beginning to think there might be some truth to it." Nathan's expression remained guarded. "Don't confuse the performance with reality, Grace. That's dangerous for both of us." "Then tell me something real," she challenged. "Something true about Nathan Parker that isn't in any dossier." For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, staring at the ceiling, he spoke quietly. "I visit Joshua every 2 months. Have since he was born. His grandparents think I'm a distant cousin who takes an interest in him. He only learned I was his father a year ago." "Do you love him?" Grace asked softly. Nathan's jaw tightened. "I hardly know him, but I want to. That's why all of this," he gestured between them, "is necessary. I've missed 8 years already. I won't miss any more." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Grace. Impulsively, she reached across the expanse of sheets and placed her hand over his. "Then we'll make sure it works." The next morning brought a new complication. Over breakfast, Henderson announced cheerfully, "I've arranged a special outing today. The Palmers, close friends of mine, are celebrating their anniversary with a garden party at their estate. I told them you'd both attend." Nathan's expression remained pleasant, but Grace felt him tense beside her. "That's very thoughtful, Richard, but Grace and I had planned..." "Nonsense! All of Burlington's finest will be there. Excellent networking opportunity." Henderson's tone made it clear this wasn't optional. "Besides, I believe the Palmer's estate is quite near your other appointment this afternoon." The meaningful look he gave Nathan sent a chill through Grace. Did Henderson know about Joshua? In the car afterward, Nathan's knuckles whitened as he gripped his phone. "He knows something," he muttered, "or suspects. Could he have had us investigated?" "Almost certainly." Nathan's jaw clenched. "This complicates everything. The garden party will take hours. I was supposed to meet Joshua at 2 o'clock. Grace touched his arm gently. "Then we'll make an appearance at the party and find a reason to leave early. Simple." Nathan looked at her, his expression softening slightly. "Nothing about this is simple." The Palmer's garden party was elegant and crowded, Vermont's upper crust in summer finery, sipping champagne among blooming hydrangeas. Grace felt eyes following them as Nathan guided her through the crowd, his hand a constant presence at her lower back. "Nathan Parker!" A woman in an elaborate hat approached. "What a marvelous surprise! And this must be your bride." We were all shocked when we heard the most eligible bachelor in Chicago had finally been caught. "Grace wasn't trying to catch me, Mrs. Palmer," Nathan replied with practiced charm. "She was trying to avoid me." Made her all the more irresistible. As the afternoon wore on, Grace found herself separated from Nathan as various guests pulled him into conversations. She was sipping lemonade near a fountain when a distinguished man approached. "Mrs. Parker, I'm Victor Reed. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance in Maplewood." Grace's heart skipped. Maplewood. The small town where Joshua lived with his grandparents. "I'm not sure I understand," she replied carefully. Reed's smile didn't reach his eyes. No? Interesting. Because I distinctly remember seeing your husband there several times over the years, always visiting the Harrigan family, always alone. Before Grace could formulate a response, Nathan appeared at her side, his expression pleasant, but his eyes cold. Victor, I see you've met my wife. Indeed. Reed raised his glass slightly. We were just discussing mutual connections. How fascinating, Nathan said, his arm sliding possessively around Grace's waist. Unfortunately, we need to leave. Grace isn't feeling well. The heat, I think. As they walked swiftly toward their car, Grace whispered, Who is he? Henderson's lawyer and clearly his informant. Nathan's expression was grim. This isn't coincidence. Henderson is testing us, testing you specifically. He wanted to see if you knew about Joshua. What do we do now? Nathan checked his watch. We keep our appointment and pray Henderson doesn't already know too much. The Harrigan home was modest and well kept, with toys scattered across the front yard. Grace felt her nerves intensify as they approached the door. This wasn't just about convincing Henderson anymore. This was about a little boy whose life was about to change dramatically. The door opened before they reached it. An elderly man with kind eyes stood there, supporting himself with a cane. Behind him, partially hidden, was a small figure with dark hair and familiar blue eyes. Nathan, the old man said warmly. And this must be Grace. As Nathan made introductions, Grace knelt down to be at eye level with the boy who watched her with undisguised curiosity. Hello, Joshua, she said gently. I'm very happy to meet you. The boy studied her face intently, before asking the question that would change everything. Are you really my new mum? The question hung in the air between them. Grace felt Nathan tense beside her, and Mr. Harrigan's gentle smile faltered. No one had prepared her for this direct inquiry from an 8-year-old with questioning blue eyes so much like his father's. Joshua, Mr. Harrigan said carefully, remember what we discussed about Nathan and Grace's visit? But Grace had already made her decision. She met Joshua's gaze directly, seeing the vulnerability behind his boldness. I'm married to your dad, she said truthfully, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you better. Would that be okay with you? Joshua considered this, his small face serious. Do you like video games? Grace smiled, relieved at the shift. I'm pretty good at Mario Kart. I'm better, Joshua declared, a hint of challenge in his voice. We'll have to see about that, Grace responded, and was rewarded with the first flicker of a smile from the boy. Mrs. Harrigan appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. Her eyes were kind but tired, the strain of her husband's illness evident in the shadows beneath them. Come in, come in. I've made lemonade and cookies. Inside, the house was warm and lived in. Photos of Joshua through the years adorned the walls, along with pictures of a young woman with his same dark hair. His mother, Grace realized, the woman whose face had been removed from the photo in Nathan's office. While Joshua showed Nathan his newest science project, Mrs. Harrigan drew Grace aside. He's been so excited about this visit, she confided, ever since Nathan told him about moving to Chicago. And now, learning about you. She studied Grace with grandmother's discerning eyes. It's good for him to have a mother figure. Grace felt a twinge of guilt at the deception. I'll do my best for him, she promised, and was surprised to realize she meant it. They spent 2 hours with Joshua, watching him demonstrate his toys, listening to his stories about school, observing the careful way Nathan interacted with his son, still getting to know him, but with a genuine desire to connect. When it was time to leave, Joshua hugged Nathan awkwardly, then to everyone's surprise offered Grace a hug too. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked. We'll try, Nathan answered before Grace could respond. We have some business with Mr. Henderson first. In the car, silence stretched between them until Nathan finally spoke. Thank you for how you were with him. Grace looked out the window at the passing Vermont landscape. He's a wonderful boy. You should be proud. I am. Nathan's voice softened. His grandmother says he's gifted in mathematics, like me at that age. You never told me who his mother was, Grace said carefully. Nathan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Eliza Harrigan. We met at MIT. She was brilliant, studying computational biology. It was brief but intense. When she told me she was pregnant, I was just starting Parker Industries. I wasn't ready to be a father. So you paid her to keep it quiet, Grace concluded. It wasn't that simple. Nathan's jaw tightened. Eliza didn't want marriage or a traditional family. She wanted her career, her independence. The arrangement suited us both. Until she died. Until she died, Nathan echoed. I've regretted our agreement every day since Joshua was born, but by then the patterns were set. Parker Industries was taking off, my public image was established, and bringing a secret child into the spotlight seemed cruel to him. Grace turned to study his profile. And now? Now I want to do it right, to be a real father. His voice held a determination she recognized, the same focus he brought to business challenges. But I need help. He needs more than just me. The implication hung between them as they pulled into Henderson's estate. Before they reached the door, Nathan stopped her with a gentle hand on her arm. Henderson knows something, he said quietly. Victor Reed's appearance at the party wasn't coincidence. We need to be prepared. Grace nodded, feeling the weight of the diamond on her finger. I'm ready. Henderson awaited them in his study, a fire crackling despite the summer evening. His expression was unreadable as he gestured for them to sit. Productive afternoon? He asked casually, pouring 3 glasses of scotch. Very, Nathan replied. The Palmers throw an excellent party. Henderson handed them each a glass. And after the party, I understand you had another appointment in Maplewood. The trap was sprung. Nathan's face revealed nothing, but Grace felt him go still beside her. We did, he acknowledged after a moment. Henderson swirled his scotch, watching the amber liquid catch the firelight. You know, Nathan, when I investigate potential business partners, I'm very thorough. Family connections, financial stability, personal history, all of it matters when considering a legacy merger. And what did your investigation reveal? Nathan asked, his voice controlled. Henderson's gaze shifted to Grace. A marriage certificate dated exactly 5 months ago, an executive assistant promoted remarkably quickly, and regular visits to a small town in Vermont over 8 years. He set down his glass. Tell me about the boy, Nathan. The moment stretched taut between them. Grace felt the charade balancing on a knife's edge. Then, surprising her completely, Nathan reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers before meeting Henderson's eyes. Joshua is my son, he said simply. His mother died 3 years ago. He's been raised by his grandparents, but Mr. Harrigan's health is failing. Joshua is coming to live with us in Chicago, permanently. Henderson nodded slowly. And your marriage? Is that also for Joshua's benefit? Before Nathan could answer, Grace squeezed his hand and spoke. Our relationship began as many do in corporate environments, professionally, but things changed. She looked at Nathan, drawing from the genuine complexity of feelings that had developed over the past days. We kept it private initially because of my position at the company. The decision to marry was accelerated when Nathan decided to bring Joshua home. She turned back to Henderson. Is it conventional? No, but we're building something real. A family for Joshua, a partnership for ourselves. Henderson studied them both, his shrewd eyes missing nothing. And why the secrecy with me? Why not simply tell me about your son from the beginning? Because I've kept him protected from the public eye his entire life, Nathan answered. And because I needed to know what kind of man you are before entrusting you with knowledge that could affect him. A long silence followed. Then Henderson began to laugh, a genuine hearty sound that filled the wood-paneled room. Well played, Parker. Very well played indeed. The tension broke. Henderson refilled their glasses, raising his in a toast. To unconventional families and to honest business partners. Later that night, in the privacy of their suite, Grace paced while Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, tie loosened, the picture of exhausted relief. I can't believe that worked, she said. Henderson actually respects you more now. He values authenticity and family above all else, Nathan replied. We gave him both, in our own way. Grace stopped pacing. But was it authentic? We're still lying about our marriage. Nathan looked up at her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. Are we? You were remarkable today. With Joshua, with Henderson, the way you spoke about us, it felt real. It's called good acting, Grace deflected, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Is it? Nathan stood, moving toward her. Because I've been watching you perform for Henderson since we arrived, and what happened today was different. Grace took an instinctive step back. Nathan, don't confuse the performance with reality. Isn't that what you told me? I was wrong, he said simply. "Something has changed between us, Grace. You feel it too." Her heart hammered against her ribs as Nathan stopped directly in front of her. "This was supposed to be transactional," she reminded him. "A business arrangement. Life rarely follows business plans." His voice softened. "Joshua likes you. He needs someone like you in his life." "I need—" He stopped, seemingly surprised by his own admission. "What do you need?" Grace asked quietly. Instead of answering, Nathan did something entirely unexpected. He reached up and gently cupped her face in his hands. "I need to know if this is still just an act for you." The question hung between them, charged with possibility. Grace could have pulled away, maintained the professional boundary, reminded him of their contract. Instead, she found herself leaning forward, closing the distance between them. Their first real kiss, not for show, not for anyone else's benefit, was tentative, questioning. Then, as Nathan's arms slid around her waist, drawing her closer, it deepened into something neither had anticipated when this arrangement began. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Grace searched his face. "What happens now?" "Now we have a choice," Nathan said, still holding her close. "We can continue as planned, bring Joshua to Chicago, maintain our arrangement for the specified time, then part ways. Or, Grace prompted when he hesitated, "or we can try something real. Not for Henderson, not for Joshua, but for us." 3 weeks later, Grace stood in the newly decorated bedroom of Nathan's penthouse, arranging stuffed animals on Joshua's bed. The boy would arrive tomorrow, beginning his new life in Chicago with them. The walls were painted a sky blue he had chosen during a video call, and a telescope, his passion, stood by the window with its view of the city and lake beyond. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. After returning from Vermont, they had made their marriage public, attending charity events together, being photographed at restaurants, crafting the image of Chicago's most surprising power couple. Parker Industries' stock had risen with the announcement of the Henderson merger. And, in private, they had begun the delicate, sometimes awkward process of transforming their pretense into something genuine. "He's going to love it," Nathan said from the doorway, watching her adjust a model solar system hanging from the ceiling. Grace turned, still sometimes surprised by the sight of Nathan in casual clothes, jeans and a simple button-down, rather than his corporate armor. "I hope so. It's a big adjustment. For all of us." Nathan crossed the room and took her hands in his. Having second thoughts, Grace shook her head. "Not about Joshua. He deserves all the stability and love we can give him." She hesitated. "But sometimes I wonder if we're rushing things. Between us, I mean." "We did get married before our first date," Nathan acknowledged with a wry smile. "Not the conventional order. Nothing about this has been conventional." Grace looked down at the rings on her finger, no longer props, but symbols of a commitment they were still defining. Nathan tilted her chin up gently. "I've spent my life planning everything, controlling every variable. This, us, wasn't in any strategic forecast. But sometimes the best opportunities are the ones you don't plan for. Is that what I am? An opportunity?" Grace teased. "You're the variable that changed everything," Nathan answered seriously. "And I've never been more grateful for a calculation error." Grace laughed. "That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said to me." "I'm working on it." His smile turned thoughtful. "We have time now, real time, not just the 3 months in our contract." "Speaking of which," Grace said, "I had Judith draw up dissolution papers for our original agreement." She reached into her pocket and handed him a folded document. It seemed appropriate to formally end the business arrangement if we're going to try a real marriage. Nathan took the paper but didn't open it. Instead, he pulled her into an embrace. "Joshua asked me something on the phone yesterday," he said against her hair. "He wanted to know if it was okay to call you Mom when he gets here." Grace pulled back, eyes wide. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that was entirely up to you." Nathan's expression grew serious. "This isn't what you signed up for originally. If it's too much—" Grace placed her fingers against his lips, stopping his words. "Tell him yes," she said softly. "If that's what he wants, then yes." Later that evening, they stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline where their story had begun. The summer breeze caught Grace's hair as Nathan handed her a glass of wine. "To unconventional beginnings," he toasted, echoing Henderson's words from weeks earlier. And unexpected endings, Grace added, clinking her glass against his. Below them, the city pulsed with light and life. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter. Joshua's arrival. The beginning of their life as a real family. Challenges they couldn't yet anticipate. But standing there, with the weight of Nathan's arm around her shoulders and the knowledge of how far they'd come from that first outrageous proposition in his office, Grace felt a certainty she hadn't expected. Some performances, it seemed, could transform into truths more meaningful than either of them had imagined possible.